The warning sirens echoed across every level of Project Kronos. Red emergency lights flashed through the underground corridors as military personnel rushed toward their battle stations. Above them, hidden beneath 6 kilometers of solid rock, humanity's greatest secret was now the primary target of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Inside the command chamber, General Ethan Carter stared at the tactical display. It made no sense. Hundreds of enemy warships were advancing toward Earth, yet only a handful appeared on the sensors. An officer's voice trembled. "General, visual satellites confirm approximately 12,000 enemy vessels." He paused before continuing. "Our radar only detects 9. The room fell silent. Another technician quickly checked the systems. No hardware failure. No software corruption. "Our sensors are functioning perfectly." General Carter slowly looked toward Commander Alex Voss. "You knew this would happen." Alex nodded. They've deployed the Shadow Fleet. Above Earth's atmosphere, the darkness of space looked strangely empty. There were no massive alien formations, no endless armadas, only a few distant warships drifting silently. But the truth was far more terrifying. Thousands of invisible vessels were moving through a layer of reality that human technology couldn't fully observe. To every radar system, they simply didn't exist. Inside the alien flagship, Commander Kaler Vex watched the operation with satisfaction. The humans are searching for ghosts. A young officer smiled confidently. The Shadow Fleet has crossed 70% of Earth's defense perimeter. No resistance detected. Kaler folded his arms. They spent 20 years learning how to predict us. He laughed quietly. But how can they predict an enemy they cannot even see? Around him, the bridge crew relaxed for the first time since the invasion began. Victory finally seemed possible. Deep inside Project Kronos, Professor Sarah Lawson activated the quantum simulation. The enormous machine illuminated the chamber with waves of blue and golden light. Millions of future timelines spread through the air. Normally, within seconds, one timeline would glow green, marking humanity's path to victory. Today, every timeline collapsed, one after another. Green became yellow. Yellow became red. Then, nothing. The holograms vanished. The Kronos core had stopped calculating. A scientist stared at the blank display. "It can't find a future." Another whispered, "Kronos has never failed before." Sarah looked at Alex. "What changed?" Alex answered quietly. "The Shadow Fleet doesn't obey normal space. It hides between dimensions. Kronos can only calculate what exists inside our timeline." The realization struck everyone at once. For the first time since the war began, humanity was blind. General Carter clenched his fists. "So we've lost our advantage." Alex shook his head. "Not yet." He walked toward the glowing Kronos core. "The machine can't see them. But I can." Sarah looked surprised. "How?" Alex's expression darkened. "Because I've fought them before." He reached toward the holographic map. One by one, invisible enemy ships began appearing where Alex pointed. "They'll emerge here." He marked another location. "And here." Then another. And the largest ship. His finger stopped above the Swiss Alps. "Is heading straight for Project Kronos." The room froze. An officer quickly zoomed in. Nothing appeared on the radar. But 10 seconds later, a faint energy signature suddenly emerged. Then another. Then hundreds. The invisible fleet was becoming visible, exactly where Alex had predicted. A technician shouted, "He's right. They're coming directly toward us." General Carter immediately issued his orders. "Deploy every defense unit around the Alps. Launch the Horizon Fleet. Protect Kronos at all costs." Across Earth, human warships roared into action. Blue engine trails lit up the night sky as fighters and orbital cruisers raced toward the mountains. For the first time, the battle was no longer about saving Earth. It was about protecting the one machine that had given humanity a chance to survive. High above the planet, hidden behind the moon, a colossal black warship slowly emerged from the shadows. It was larger than any vessel humanity had ever seen. Its bow turned toward the Swiss Alps. A crimson beam began charging at its center. Commander Kaler smiled coldly. Destroy Project Kronos, and humanity's future dies with it. The massive black warship emerged completely from the darkness. It was unlike any vessel the Ether Dominion had deployed before. Its surface absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Crimson energy pulsed through thousands of glowing lines across its armor, and at its center, a colossal cannon slowly began charging. Every military satellite focused on the ship. Within seconds, its name appeared on every command screen. Unknown vessel identified. Classification: Oblivion Dreadnought. Target: Project Kronos. Inside the United Earth Defense Command, silence filled the room. An intelligence officer broke it first. If that weapon fires... He swallowed hard. The entire Swiss Mountain Range will disappear. General Ethan Carter stared at the tactical map. Estimated impact? 9 minutes. Only 9 minutes remained before humanity lost the one advantage that had kept them alive since the invasion began. Deep beneath the Alps, Project Kronos continued emitting unstable waves of blue and golden light. For the first time in its history, the quantum core was struggling. Millions of timelines appeared across the chamber, then vanished, appeared again, then collapsed. Professor Sarah Lawson watched helplessly. It's searching, but it can't find a stable future. Commander Alex Voss stepped toward the machine. It still can. Sarah looked at him. How? Alex answered quietly. Force it to run one final simulation. A young scientist hesitated. Professor, that's impossible. The core has already reached maximum capacity. If we overload it... He looked toward the glowing crystal. It may never function again. Sarah closed her eyes. If Kronos survived, humanity might still lose. If Kronos was destroyed, humanity would certainly lose. She opened her eyes. Do it. The chamber shook violently. Engineers redirected every remaining power source into the Kronos core. The giant ring surrounding the machine accelerated faster and faster. Blue light turned white. The sound became deafening. Across the chamber, holographic timelines multiplied by the millions. Simulation after simulation flashed before the scientists' eyes. Every possible strategy, every possible sacrifice, every possible future. Finally, the machine stopped. The room became completely silent. A single result appeared above the core. Final simulation complete. Everyone held their breath. The probability slowly appeared. Chance of human victory: 1.03%. Nobody spoke. 1%. After millions of successful predictions, humanity's survival had fallen to almost nothing. General Carter looked toward Sarah. There has to be another simulation. Sarah shook her head. There isn't. Commander Alex stepped forward. There's only one path left. General Carter looked at him. What is it? Alex pointed toward the holographic battlefield. If we continue defending Earth, we lose. If we protect Kronos, we lose. If we retreat, we lose. The room fell silent. Sarah finally whispered, So what do we do? Alex took a deep breath. We attack. Several officers stared at him in disbelief. Attack? With only a 1% chance. Alex nodded. The enemy believes Kronos is our greatest weapon. They're wrong. General Carter frowned. Then what is... Alex looked directly at every person in the room. You are... At that moment, the Kronos core projected the final timeline. The scientists watched in shock. Human fleets ignored the invading armada. Instead, every available ship accelerated directly toward the Oblivion Dreadnought. It wasn't a defensive maneuver. It was a suicide mission. The simulation ended with one final message. Required survival rate. Mission success, 1.03%. Expected human casualties, 97%. The chamber became silent. Even the air felt heavy. General Carter slowly looked around the room. Every officer understood what the machine was asking. Almost everyone would die, but humanity would live. Without hesitation, Carter pressed the fleet-wide communication button. His voice echoed across every human warship in orbit. This is General Ethan Carter. Project Kronos has completed its final simulation. Victory is still possible. He paused. It simply requires everything we have. Not a single captain objected. Not one pilot requested permission to retreat. Across Earth's orbit, thousands of human ships turned together, not away from danger, but straight toward it. Watching from his flagship, Emperor Zareth smiled. They're making one final desperate charge. Commander Kaler nodded confidently. They've accepted defeat. But deep beneath the Alps, Commander Alex Voss quietly looked at the glowing Kronos core. Then he whispered words that no one else understood. This is exactly how the winning timeline begins. Thousands of human warships accelerated at once. Blue engine trails illuminated the darkness around Earth as every vessel abandoned its defensive formation. From orbit, it looked as if the entire human fleet had made a single impossible decision. They were charging directly toward the Oblivion Dreadnought. Inside the alien flagship, Commander Kaler Vex watched the tactical display with a confident smile. So, they finally lost hope. One of his officers nodded. Our calculations indicate a 99% probability of total human destruction. Kaler folded his arms. They're sacrificing themselves. It changes nothing. But Emperor Zareth wasn't smiling. His crimson eyes remained fixed on the human fleet. Something is wrong. Kaler looked confused. My Emperor? Zareth pointed toward the tactical map. Humans don't panic. They predicted every move we've made. If they're attacking now, they know something we don't. For the first time, the Emperor felt uneasy. Aboard the USS Horizon, Captain Daniel Reyes stood before a massive holographic display. Every enemy ship was marked in red. The largest icon belonged to the Oblivion Dreadnought. General Ethan Carter appeared on the command screen. Captain, this mission decides the future of humanity. Daniel nodded. We understand. Carter continued. Our objective is not to destroy the enemy fleet. We only need one target. He highlighted the giant black warship, the Dreadnought. Daniel smiled confidently. Then that's where we're going. The transmission ended. The bridge became silent. Every officer knew the odds. Few expected to return home. Yet not a single crew member asked to leave. Far ahead, the Shadow Fleet opened fire. Thousands of crimson plasma beams crossed space. Entire sections of the human formation disappeared in brilliant explosions. One cruiser exploded, then another, then an entire squadron vanished. But the remaining ships never slowed down. Instead, they accelerated even faster. Commander Kaler frowned. They're ignoring their losses. An officer answered nervously. They're heading straight for the Dreadnought. Kaler immediately issued an order. Deploy every interceptor. Within seconds, more than 20,000 alien fighters launched from nearby carriers. Like a swarm of metallic insects, they surrounded the advancing human fleet. The battle erupted. Blue railguns clashed with crimson plasma cannons. Explosions lit up the darkness. Fragments of destroyed ships drifted silently through space. It was the largest battle the solar system had ever witnessed. Inside Project Kronos, Professor Sarah watched the battle unfold through hundreds of holographic screens. Every second, the casualty numbers increased. Human losses, 32%, 39%, 46%. A scientist whispered, "We're losing too many ships." Sarah looked toward Commander Alex Voss. You said this was the winning timeline. Alex didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on one specific ship, the USS Horizon. Finally he spoke. They're exactly where they need to be. On board the Horizon, warning alarms echoed throughout the bridge. Hull breach on Deck 7. Forward shields below 20%. Enemy fighters approaching. Captain Daniel, remain calm. Stay on course. The first officer looked shocked. Captain, we're taking heavy damage. Daniel looked at the Dreadnought, growing larger through the main viewport. If we stop now, everyone who already died for nothing. The crew silently returned to their stations. No one argued again. A sudden blue flash filled the bridge. The Horizon's tactical AI announced. Target lock achieved. The massive Oblivion Dreadnought now filled the entire screen. Its enormous central cannon continued charging. Captain Daniel smiled. We made it! But before anyone could celebrate, the alien warship began transforming. Gigantic armored sections slowly opened across its surface. Inside, a glowing crimson sphere became visible. Commander Kaler's voice echoed across every communication channel. Humans, you believe you've reached our greatest weapon. He laughed. You haven't. The crimson sphere pulsed with terrifying energy. Professor Sarah's face turned pale. Commander Alex whispered, No, it can't be. General Carter looked at the readings. What is that? Alex slowly answered, The time breaker. The bridge of the horizon fell silent, because everyone understood one terrifying truth. If that weapon activated, Project Kronos would become completely useless. The glowing crimson sphere inside the Oblivion Dreadnought continued to expand. Its light wasn't like fire. It wasn't plasma. It wasn't electricity. It looked as if reality itself was being torn apart. Across the battlefield, every sensor aboard both human and alien ships began malfunctioning. Navigation systems failed. Targeting computers shut down. Even the stars around the Dreadnought appeared to bend unnaturally. Captain Daniel Reyes stared to the bridge viewport. What is that thing? No one answered. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Commander Alex Voss slowly closed his eyes. His worst fear had finally become reality. Inside Project Kronos, alarms screamed through every chamber. The quantum core, which had remained stable for decades, suddenly pulsed violently. Blue energy turned crimson. The holographic timelines filling the room began disappearing one after another. Professor Sarah Lawson rushed toward the main console. Status report. A scientist looked up in horror. We're losing the simulations. Another shouted, The future maps are collapsing. Sarah couldn't believe what she was seeing. Millions of predicted timelines. Gone. Within seconds. The Kronos core had never behaved like this before. Commander Alex stepped toward the glowing machine. His voice was barely above a whisper. The time breaker has been activated. General Carter frowned. What exactly does it do? Alex looked directly at him. It doesn't destroy ships. It destroys certainty. Above Earth, the crimson sphere reached full power. Commander Kaler Vex smiled. My Emperor. The weapon is ready. Emperor Zareth slowly nodded. For thousands of years, no civilization has survived its activation. Fire, a beam unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, erupted from the Dreadnought. It wasn't aimed at Earth. It wasn't aimed at the human fleet. Instead, the beam passed silently through space itself. For one terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, time began to break. Every human ship experienced something impossible. One pilot saw his fighter explode before it had even been hit. Another watched destroyed enemy ships suddenly reappear. Explosions reversed. Missiles changed direction. Entire fleets flickered in and out of existence. Captain Daniel grabbed the command console as the bridge shook violently. What is happening? The ship's AI answered with a distorted voice. Warning. Temporal instability detected. Causality failure in progress. The lights went out. For several seconds, every screen became completely black. Inside Project Kronos, the quantum core cracked. Golden energy escaped into the chamber. Scientists were thrown to the floor. Emergency systems failed. Sarah looked at the main display. The word she feared most appeared. Future prediction offline. The room fell silent. For 20 years, humanity had relied on Kronos to see tomorrow. Now, tomorrow no longer existed. General Carter slowly looked toward Alex. So, we're blind. Alex nodded. For the first time, aboard the alien flagship, celebration erupted. Commander Kaler laughed loudly. They can't predict us anymore. Our victory is certain. Even Emperor Zareth allowed himself a faint smile. The advantage belongs to us again. Thousands of alien warships advanced toward Earth. Without Kronos, humanity was just another civilization. But inside the damaged Project Kronos chamber, Alex wasn't afraid. He quietly walked toward the cracked quantum core. Sarah looked at him. You expected this. Alex nodded. Yes. General Carter stepped closer. Then why didn't you warn us? Alex's expression became heavy. Because there was no way to avoid it. Sarah whispered, then how do we win? Alex looked at the dying machine. There is one final option. He placed his hand on the glowing crystal. Golden light surrounded him. The core suddenly reacted to his touch. A hidden chamber opened beneath the machine. Inside, a small metallic device floated in the air. No scientist had ever seen it before. Sarah stared in disbelief. What is it? Alex smiled sadly. The real heart of Project Kronos. General Carter frowned. You never told us about this. Alex looked at the device. I couldn't. Because using it, he paused, erases the person who activates it from history. The room became silent. Everyone understood what he meant. Someone would have to disappear forever. Alex slowly reached toward the device. This is why I came back. Sarah stepped forward. No. There has to be another way. Alex looked at her one last time. In every future I ever saw. There wasn't. He wrapped his fingers around the glowing device. The entire chamber was flooded with brilliant golden light. And then Alex Voss vanished. The golden light faded. Silence consumed the Project Kronos chamber. Where Commander Alex Voss had been standing only seconds earlier, there was nothing. No footprints. No shadow. No trace that he had ever existed. The glowing metallic device had also disappeared. Professor Sarah Lawson stared at the empty floor, unable to speak. One of the scientists whispered, "Where did he go?" Nobody answered. General Ethan Carter slowly stepped forward. Check every security camera. Within seconds, technicians accessed the facility's recordings. The footage played back. To everyone's horror, Alex Voss never appeared. The cameras showed Sarah speaking to empty space. General Carter giving orders to no one. Scientists reacting to someone who wasn't there. It was as if history itself had erased him. A young officer looked pale. The recordings don't show Commander Voss. Sarah shook her head. No. I spoke to him. I remember him. The officer replied, quietly, so do we, but the cameras don't. Suddenly, the Kronos core pulsed again. Although badly damaged, it emitted a faint blue glow. The cracked crystal projected a fragmented hologram into the air. Instead of future timelines, old memories appeared. Scenes from another Earth, cities in flames, orbital stations collapsing, human warships drifting lifelessly through space, alien banners covering every major planet. Sarah watched in horror. This is the future Alex came from. General Carter stood silently. The hologram continued. A much older Alex Voss, wearing battle-scarred armor, stood among the last surviving human soldiers. Only a few thousand people remained alive. The galaxy had already fallen. A younger Sarah appeared in the recording. Her face was exhausted. She handed Alex a small glowing device. The time anchor is ready. Alex looked at her. If this works, you'll never remember me. Sarah smiled sadly. If it saves humanity, that's enough. The recording ended. The room fell silent. The Sarah standing in the present slowly lowered her head. Tears filled her eyes. So, he wasn't lying. Above Earth, the battle continued without Kronos. Human fleets were losing ground. Without future predictions, alien attacks became devastating. Entire squadrons vanished under relentless plasma fire. Captain Daniel Reyes watched another cruiser explode beside the USS Horizon. Report. The tactical officer answered immediately. We've lost 42% of the fleet. Our railgun accuracy has dropped by 60%. Daniel gritted his teeth. Maintain formation. Even without Kronos, retreat was not an option. Inside the alien flagship, Commander Kaler Vex finally allowed himself to relax. The humans are finished. Our victory is inevitable. But Emperor Zareth wasn't convinced. He looked toward her thoughtfully. Not yet. Kaler frowned. My emperor? Zareth folded his hands behind his back. I've fought enough wars to recognize hope. He pointed toward the human fleet. They're still advancing. They still believe they can win. And that, he narrowed his glowing eyes, makes them dangerous. back inside Project Kronos. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. The damaged core activated one final time. A single file appeared on the main screen. Its title read, "Message for Professor Sarah Lawson." Sarah slowly opened it. Alex appeared once more. This time he smiled. "If you're seeing this, it means I've already disappeared. I wish there had been another way. But every future ended the same. You once asked me why humanity always survived. It wasn't because of Project Kronos. It wasn't because we could see the future." He paused. "It was because humans never stopped fighting, even after hope was gone." Sarah wiped away a tear. Alex continued, "The time anchor didn't send me into the past. It turned me into part of the past. So if humanity is still alive, it means my mission succeeded." The message began to fade. Before disappearing completely, Alex spoke one final sentence. "The future was never something we discovered. It was something we chose to create." The screen went black. At that exact moment, every surviving human warship received a new transmission from Project Kronos. It contained only one command: target the Dreadnought's core. General Carter looked toward the stars, then quietly said, "Alex, we'll finish what you started." The transmission from Project Kronos reached every surviving human warship at the same time. Only 4 words appeared on every screen: target the Dreadnought's core. No explanation, no strategy, no prediction, just one final order. Captain Daniel Reyes stared at the message on the bridge of the USS Horizon. Around him, exhausted officers waited for instructions. The battle had already claimed thousands of lives, and nearly half of Earth's fleet had been destroyed. For the first time since the invasion began, there was no future to guide them, only faith. Daniel took a deep breath. "You all saw the message." His first officer nodded. "Yes, Captain. Project Kronos wants us to destroy the Dreadnought's core." Daniel looked out the viewport toward the enormous black warship. "Then, that's exactly what we'll do." Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, the damaged Kronos core flickered weakly. Its glowing crystal was covered in cracks. Professor Sarah Lawson stood silently before it. The machine that had protected humanity for 2 decades was dying. A scientist suddenly called out, "Professor, the core is generating one last projection." Sarah rushed to the console. Instead of millions of timelines, only one appeared. A single golden path stretched across the holographic battlefield. There were no alternate futures, no branching possibilities, just one. The screen displayed, "Final timeline, no second chance." Sarah whispered, "This is the last future." General Carter stared at the projection. "What does it show?" The hologram zoomed toward the Oblivion Dreadnought. A glowing red sphere pulsed deep inside the enemy ship. The projection highlighted one location: primary reactor core. A scientist analyzed the data. "If we destroy that reactor, the time breaker will collapse." Sarah nodded, "But there's a problem." She enlarged the hologram. The reactor sat behind layer after layer of impossible armor. Thousands of defense turrets, energy shields, internal security fleets. One engineer looked at the calculations. "No missile can reach it." Another added, "No fighter can survive that far." The room became silent. General Carter slowly understood. There's only one way inside. Sarah looked at him. The Horizon. Aboard the USS Horizon, Captain Daniel received a mission update. His tactical officer looked shocked. "They want us to fly directly into the Dreadnought." Daniel smiled faintly. "I guess as much." The officer swallowed. "Captain, that's a one-way mission." Daniel looked around the bridge. Every crew member met his eyes. No one looked away. Finally, the chief engineer spoke. "We've come this far. We finish it together." One by one, every officer nodded. Nobody requested evacuation. Nobody asked to retreat. Daniel pressed the fleet-wide communication channel. "This is Captain Daniel Reyes. The Horizon will breach the enemy flagship. All remaining vessels. Clear us a path." Across the battlefield, hundreds of damaged human ships immediately changed formation. Without hesitation, they placed themselves between the Horizon and the alien fleet. One by one, human cruisers sacrificed themselves to block incoming fire. Blue explosions lit up the darkness. Every second they bought moved the horizon closer to its target. Inside the alien flagship, Commander Kaler suddenly noticed the human formation changing. My Emperor, they're ignoring our fleet. They're heading directly toward us. Emperor Zaratha's expression changed. They know. Kaler looked confused. Know what? Zarath slowly turned toward the glowing timebreaker. They found the reactor. For the first time, fear appeared in the Emperor's eyes. He immediately shouted, "Seal every internal corridor. Deploy the Imperial Guard. Do not let that human ship reach the core." Thousands of elite alien soldiers rushed into position. Massive blast doors slammed shut throughout the dreadnought. Every defense system activated. The greatest fortress in the galaxy prepared for one final battle. Outside, the USS Horizon accelerated beyond maximum speed. Warning alarms echoed across the bridge. Engine overload. Hull stress critical. Captain Daniel never looked away from a massive black warship filling the viewport. He whispered, "This end today." The Horizon's forward railguns fired continuously, tearing open a narrow breach in the dreadnought's outer armor. Flames erupted across the enemy hull. The opening was barely large enough. Daniel stood from his command chair, full power. The first officer gasped, "Captain, we won't survive the impact." Daniel smiled. "We were never supposed to." The engines roared. The Horizon became a blue comet, and with one final burst of speed, it plunged straight into the heart of the alien flagship. The USS Horizon tore through the outer hull of the Oblivion dreadnought like a spear of blue fire. Metal screamed. Armor plates exploded in every direction. The impact shook the entire alien flagship, sending shockwaves through its endless corridors. Emergency lights flashed crimson as alarms echoed from one end of the vessel to the other. On the bridge, Captain Daniel Reyes struggled to remain standing. The violent collision threw officers against their consoles. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The tactical officer looked up, blood running down his forehead. "Captain, we're inside." Daniel stared at the main display. The reactor core was less than 3 kilometers away. Status: the chief engineer answered between heavy breaths. Forward engines destroyed. Life support failing. Hull integrity at 19%. Daniel gave a calm nod. "We don't need the ship anymore. We only need those 3 kilometers." Throughout the dreadnought, thousands of elite alien soldiers rushed toward the breached corridor. Heavy plasma weapons lit the dark hallways. The first blast struck the Horizon's damaged hull. Another followed, then dozens more. Captain Daniel activated the internal communication system. "All boarding teams, move." The cargo bay doors burst open. Hundreds of human soldiers charged into the burning corridors. Blue pulse rifles answered the crimson plasma fire. The narrow hallways became a battlefield. Every meter forward cost lives. But no one stopped. Every soldier knew the mission: reach the reactor, no matter the cost. On the bridge of the dreadnought, Commander Kaler watched the security feed. "They're breaking through Sector 12. An officer shouted, "Sector 11 has fallen." Another cried, "The Imperial Guard can't stop them." Kaler slammed his fist onto the console. "They're only humans. Why won't they die?" Emperor Zarath stood silently before the holographic battlefield. His expression was no longer filled with anger. It was filled with understanding. Quietly, he said, "Because they aren't fighting for victory. They're fighting for each other." The bridge fell silent. No one answered. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Project Kronos emitted one final pulse. Professor Sarah Lawson watched as the cracked crystal slowly lost its light. A scientist whispered, "The core is shutting down." Sarah smiled sadly. It has done everything it could. The machine that had changed humanity forever was reaching the end of its existence. Yet for the first time, humanity no longer depended on it. Inside the dreadnought, Captain Daniel and the surviving soldiers reached the final blast door. Beyond it, the reactor core glowed like a miniature sun. The time breaker floated above it, still releasing waves of unstable energy. The chief engineer scanned the structure. Captain, the reactor is protected by an antimatter containment field. Daniel frowned. Can we disable it? The engineer slowly shook his head. No, only one thing can destroy it. What? The engineer looked at the damaged horizon. If we overload our fusion core, the explosion will destroy the reactor. Daniel understood immediately. But the blast radius. No one survives. Silence. Every soldier looked at one another. Not a single person stepped back. Daniel smiled proudly. I've never been more honored to serve with you. At that moment, a secure communication channel opened. Emperor Zareth appeared on Daniel's helmet display. The alien ruler looked directly into his eyes. Human, if you destroy this reactor, you will die. Daniel nodded. I know. Zareth continued. Order your people to surrender. I will spare those who remain. Daniel looked around at his exhausted crew, then smiled. You still don't understand humanity. We don't fight because we're certain we'll survive. We fight so the people behind us can... The transmission ended. For the first time in thousands of years, Emperor Zareth lowered his head, not in defeat, in respect. He quietly whispered, We never lost to human technology. We lost the human spirit. Captain Daniel turned toward his crew. Prepare the overload sequence. The engineers entered the final command. The fusion core began glowing brilliant white. Outside, every remaining human ship retreated to a safe distance. Inside the dreadnought, the countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Daniel looked to the cracked viewport toward Earth, shining like a blue jewel in the darkness. He smiled one final time. For humanity, the reactor erupted in blinding light. A massive explosion consumed the heart of the dreadnought. The time breaker shattered into millions of glowing fragments. A shockwave raced across the battlefield. One by one, every Shadow Fleet warship lost power. The greatest weapon in the Ether Dominion had fallen. The explosion of the Oblivion Dreadnought was visible from every corner of the solar system. For several seconds, no one moved. The enormous black warship, once believed to be invincible, slowly cracked apart. Brilliant blue and crimson energy erupted from its shattered reactor as millions of fragments drifted into the darkness of space. Then, the impossible happened. Every ship in the Shadow Fleet suddenly lost power. One after another, the invisible warships flickered into existence. Their cloaking systems failed, engines shut down, and weapons went silent. The battlefield that had been filled with chaos only moments before became eerily quiet. Inside the alien flagship, Commander Kaler Vex stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Our fleets, they're offline. An officer frantically checked every console. The time breaker is gone. We've lost command over the Shadow Fleet. Kaler slammed both hands onto the console. No, this can't be happening. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Ether Dominion had no answer. Every advantage they had relied upon had disappeared in a single blinding explosion. Emperor Zareth slowly rose from his throne. He looked through the massive observation window at the remains of the dreadnought floating silently through space. The human flagship, the USS Horizon, was gone. Its sacrifice had changed the course of the war. For a long moment, the Emperor said nothing. Then he quietly spoke. Open a channel to every Imperial ship. The bridge officers obeyed immediately. The Emperor's voice echoed across the entire alien fleet. Warriors of the Ether Dominion, today we witness something no empire has ever seen. An enemy willing to sacrifice everything, not for conquest, but for the survival of others. He closed his eyes. The war is over. The bridge officers looked at him in shock. My Emperor, you cannot mean... Zareth slowly nodded. I do. Transmit the surrender order. Across the battlefield, thousands of alien warships powered down their weapons. One by one, they lowered their shields. Human commanders watched in stunned silence. General Ethan Carter stood inside the United Earth Defense Command, unable to believe what he was seeing. A communications officer smiled. General, they're surrendering. For several seconds, Carter couldn't speak. After everything humanity had endured, the invasion was finally over. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Project Kronos emitted one final pulse of blue light. Professor Sarah Lawson gently placed her hand on the cracked crystal. The machine that had guided humanity through millions of possible futures had fulfilled its purpose. The crystal slowly dimmed. The floating ring stopped spinning. The chamber became silent. A scientist looked toward Sarah. "What happens now?" She smiled softly. "For the first time, we'll discover tomorrow on our own." She pressed the shutdown command. The words appeared across the central screen. Project Kronos. Mission complete. System offline. The lights inside the chamber faded forever. Days later, representatives of Earth and the Ether Dominion gathered aboard a neutral space station orbiting Saturn. For the first time, humans and aliens stood together, without weapons. Emperor Zareth walked toward General Carter. Every soldier watched in silence. The Emperor stopped only a few steps away. He removed the imperial crest from his armor and placed it in Carter's hands. Among his people, it was the highest symbol of honor. "You have earned the respect of the Ether Dominion." General Carter accepted the crest. "We never wanted this war." Zareth nodded. "Neither do we anymore." The two leaders shook hands. At that moment, the first peace treaty between humanity and an alien empire was signed. As celebration spread across Earth, a young communications officer inside the Deep Space Observatory suddenly frowned. "Professor?" Sarah looked up. "What is it?" The officer zoomed in on a faint signal arriving from the edge of the galaxy. "It isn't from the Ether Dominion. It isn't from any known civilization." The mysterious transmission repeated itself again, stronger this time. Sarah stared at the screen. A feeling of unease returned. She whispered, "So, this wasn't the end." Far beyond the Milky Way, something ancient had awakened, and it had just noticed humanity. The celebration across Earth lasted for days. Cities that had prepared for extinction were now filled with lights, music, and hope. From New York to Tokyo, from the lunar colony to the orbital stations above Mars, humanity celebrated the impossible. Against every prediction, against the most powerful empire in the galaxy, Earth had survived. Yet inside the United Earth Defense Command, there was no celebration. General Ethan Carter stood before a giant window overlooking the stars. His thoughts were not on victory. They were on the message received from deep space. The unknown signal. It had arrived from beyond the edge of the mapped galaxy, and no one knew who or what had sent it. 1 week later, the leaders of Earth gathered at the rebuilt Project Kronos facility. The underground chamber was silent. The once powerful quantum core was now dark. The glowing rings had stopped forever. Professor Sarah Lawson placed a small metal plaque beneath the cracked crystal. It read, "Project Kronos." It did not give humanity the future. It gave humanity the chance to choose one. For several moments, nobody spoke. General Carter finally broke the silence. "We spent years believing this machine was our greatest weapon." Sarah smiled softly. "It wasn't." He looked at her. "It was the people willing to fight for tomorrow." Everyone understood who she meant. Commander Alex Voss, Captain Daniel Reyes, the thousands of soldiers who never returned home. Their names would be remembered for generations. 3 months later, humanity launched its greatest mission. A new exploration vessel, UES Pathfinder, left Earth's orbit. Unlike every warship before it, the Pathfinder carried no heavy weapons. Its mission was not to conquer. It was to answer the mysterious signal. As the ship crossed the outer edge of the solar system, millions watched the live broadcast. Children waved goodbye. Families stood proudly. Humanity was no longer looking toward the stars with fear. It was looking with curiosity. Weeks passed, then months. Finally, the Pathfinder reached the source of the signal. The crew stared through the observation window in complete disbelief. There were no planets, no stars, no fleets. Instead, a colossal ancient structure floated silently in the darkness. It was larger than a moon. Its surface shimmered with golden symbols older than any civilization humanity had ever known. Captain Elena Brooks whispered, What is this place? Before anyone could answer, the structure awakened. Golden light spread across its surface. A calm, powerful voice echoed through every system aboard the Pathfinder. Humanity, you have passed the first trial. The bridge fell silent. The voice continued. Many civilizations achieved great power. Many conquered galaxies. Many mastered technology. A pause followed, but only one species chose sacrifice over certainty. Professor Sarah, listening from Earth, felt chills. The ancient voice spoke once more. For that reason, the Guardians recognized humanity. Suddenly, the stars around a Pathfinder began glowing. Thousands of enormous ancient structures emerged from deep space. They had been hidden for millions of years. Humanity realized something incredible. The galaxy had never been empty. It had been watching, waiting. Back on Earth, General Carter looked toward the night sky. A faint smile crossed his face. The unknown signal had never been a warning. It had been an invitation. Humanity had proven that true strength was not found in the biggest fleet, the strongest weapon, or the ability to see the future. It was found in courage, the courage to stand together, the courage to sacrifice, and the courage to choose hope when every prediction said defeat was certain. As the camera slowly pulled away from Earth, the ancient voice echoed one final time across the stars. The future does not belong to those who can see it. It belongs to those brave enough to create it. The blue planet slowly faded into the endless darkness of space. But this time, humanity wasn't entering the unknown as victims. It was entering it as equals. And somewhere beyond the stars, a new adventure had already begun. The End rocket,